Well, hello everybody. Welcome to Aquarius Rising Africa. And I know, I've just actually realized we're supposed to be on solutions, but for some reason, apparently, I decided we needed to be on Aquarius Rising tonight. So here we are again. Welcome back, and nice to see you all in the chat again. Charmaine, Lisa D, Colleen, the usual suspects. So nice to see you guys. And hello, Bryce. How you doing?
I am excited about talking about this nonsense we're going to talk about today. Maybe it's better this is on Aquarius Rising Africa and not solutions, because even though this could be a solution for wellness, it's kind of a nasty one. So
I mean, this is so crazy. Actually had no idea what trephinning actually meant. So of course I had to go and check it out and give myself some education on that, which is quite crazy. But in a nutshell, I know that we're going to be talking about it, but it's pretty much people going to spiritual healers or maybe even medical people, whatever, for maybe medical reasons, and having a hole drilled in your head while you are conscious for you to aim, sometimes release demonic entities in your body or release certain illnesses from your body, and also maybe reach a higher state of spiritual consciousness. So, and from what we're seeing as well, this has been practiced by many of the ancient tribes as well. So this is really just, Bryce, as you and I were just saying off air, this is really just, it's not anything new because it's becoming a trend again with people.
it's been
So it's
rediscovered.
more just a reawakening of our past history again and using what the ancients used. I mean, no, I will not be doing anything ever like that. I definitely won't be doing that. But I mean,
It's
it's
like
just
a
an
train
interesting.
wreck. Like, you can't with this trepanning stuff. Yeah, and I will say I was laughing with you offline, Shanti. Like, for all the single ladies or single men out there, get yourself a partner who's just as weird as you are. Because I have to thank my boyfriend, because every night there's always a debate over what we're gonna watch when we get into bed at night. And he got into bed, he was like, "Oh my God, I found this documentary. We should watch it." And I was like, what is it? He was like, "It's about this like medical procedure where they drill a hole in your head and it's supposed to bring upon like spiritual enlightenment." And I was like, "What?" We started watching it. You guys, I typically don't get super nauseous with like body, like, some people will see vomit or blood and they get a little nauseated. Typically, that's not me, but for some reason, watching trepanation makes me so queasy. Now, I was telling Shanti, my boyfriend literally wants to go to Mexico and have it done because of all the benefits of it. But it's wild, and that's what I wanted to talk about, because this, if
That's
you,
just gruesome, babe.
it's
I
so
mean, like,
gruesome.
oof.
It's so gruesome, but it's been done. It's another part of our history. And I think this is what's so interesting about it. It's another part of our history that we have not been privy to. Like, all, and
Yes,
what's wild, if you look at the trepanation, if you look at the history of trepanation, there are certain things, like every culture has its own flair and its own differences, but there are certain things that we see woven throughout all cultures, and we're like, how did all these cultures know the same thing? Well, trepanation is one of them. So whether you were in Africa, in Europe, in China, in America, wherever your ancestors are from, they are finding skulls that have been trepanned from like that from 10,000 years ago. And that when they
exactly.
first, and so for some reason in our ancient history, all of our ancestors knew what this was and knew about trepanation. Now, they originally first were reintroduced to this idea of trepanation when archaeologists found skulls in modern day France that were like 8,000 years old. And they had these holes in the skulls. They look a little like bullet holes. But
Are
obviously,
these, is this the document we have open here?
oh yeah, I
Do you
pulled
want
it up
me
on YouTube. You want to pull it up? This is a documentary. It's called A Hole in the Head.
Yeah.
And that's what we watched. A Hole in the Head. That's the documentary. It is gruesome, you guys. If you have I got queasy watching it. But anyway, it's interesting because they talk about all the different, they have different doctors, they have actual medical doctors talking about the pros and the cons to trepanation. They have people who have been trepanned. They have people talking about the significance of trepanation. But nonetheless, they found these skulls with holes in their head that were like 8,000 years old. This one in France was the first place they discovered it. Since then, they found them all over the world. And they couldn't figure out, because looking at the skulls, if you saw a hole in the head of a skull, you would think that was probably how the person perished. However, when they examined the skull, it looked like the hole had healed. So that means that this was why it's calling while they're alive. So that meant that the hole in the head was not the cause of this person's death because it showed signs of healing. They found livestock with, now about 8,000 years ago, according to the official narrative of our history, that's when people started creating agriculture and villages. We were starting to become more centralized. And so they found animals with holes in their heads. And so basically, now they say that this was, that trepanation is one of the oldest surgical procedures in the world. The oldest that they can find is trepanation. Excuse me. Now, Shanti is right. Back in days of yore, a lot of sicknesses were given, the scapegoat were demons, and maybe there's some truth to that. But that's before they understood things like cerebral palsy, migraines, and so trepanation was used in order to release the demonic pressure on a person's consciousness. Now, in modern times, they say that there are some doctors in some countries who will do trepanation on a patient medically who struggles with migraines or struggles with cerebral palsies or epilepsy, or people who have seizures and convulsions. And basically from the medical procedure, and I guess from a spiritual procedure, this kind of made sense to me the way that they explained it in this documentary. Most of our organs are in a place in our body where they're able to move. So like your ribs are joints. So like the heart, the lungs, the colon, the kidneys, the liver, they're able to move to an extent. So like when new blood comes in or oxygen comes in, they're able to kind of move with the flow of the body. The only organ that gets constrained and can't move is the brain, right? So the skull holds the brain tightly intact. Now, what happens, allegedly, when you have trepanation is that from a medical perspective and a spiritual perspective, it allows blood flow, more blood flow to come into the brain, and it allows the membrane to move. So this is why a lot of people experience huge health benefits from trepanation. They sleep better. They have less stress in their life. They're able to settle into things more. Now, what was fascinating, I was telling Shanti, is that in this documentary, they interview people who accidentally ended up with trepanation. And these are people who like had a car wreck or had some sort of injury to their head or some sort of medical procedure done on their head. And when that was healing, a part of the skull remained open. And those people were the most fascinating people to watch in this documentary, because these were people who knew nothing about trepanation. But after having it accidentally done, they experienced significant changes in their life and significant changes in their perception of stress and the way that they sleep, the way they perceive things. So that to me was more enlightening, because they weren't.
I just want to find out, are you saying, obviously they're still doing it in this day and age, and I know that they would, like when you're looking at the ancients and the tribes and that sort of thing, and this is kind of like literally been done since the Stone Age, right?
Yeah.
They would actually be sitting there chopping somebody's head open or
Yep.
a hole in the head while that person was conscious.
Yep.
So I'm assuming for medicinal purposes, and if they're doing it now, it's done under anesthetic or something like that, right? Or are
Not that I'm
they
aware of. Maybe now again with
okay?
with the medical world, and for the people in the United States, if you are interested in this, first do your research. It cannot kill you. It's just like what it basically is a soft spot. You're recreating a soft spot from when you were born, like when the skull isn't grown together. Now, but depend on the state. Some states might allow a medical doctor to do this procedure if the medical doctor believes that this is the only thing that's really going to help you with your seizures or your epilepsy. No medical doctor is going to approve of this procedure for spiritual purposes, right? It's going to have to be because of intense headaches. Now, interestingly enough, with the founding of John Hopkins Hospital back in the early 20th century, is when they started to make trepanation taboo. So when big business, and the P word, the PH word, I know we can't say that word on YouTube, became a part of our medical industry, things like trepanation all of a sudden became taboo. So for me, as with putting my conspiracy hat on, there's obviously more to trepanation than they're letting us know. If all of our ancestors did this, if this was like common knowledge for our ancestors, and all of a sudden they start making medicine corporate and they take away this procedure. I mean, think about it this way. If you are somebody who struggles with epilepsy, or you're somebody who struggles with migraines, how much money are they making off of you buying medicine when it can be fixed with one medical procedure that allows you to have more blood flow into your brain to relieve these issues? I'm not even talking about the spiritual side of this. I'm not even talking about the fact that they say they have less stress, and they say they're having, and again, the people who accidentally had trepanation because of a car accident, who knew nothing about trepanation, they are fascinating because they are the ones that notice differences, but they weren't programmed. They weren't programmed to see differences, right? They just knew they had a car. And then when they found out, it's because they still have a little hole in their head and they're getting more blood flow to their brain. It's fascinating. And so, and I was telling Shanti, now I was laughing because, again, this is done in all cultures. Like this is not selective to just one. It's not just the Europeans or just the Africans or just the Chinese people who did this. They're finding this all over the world. So no culture can claim ownership of this because it's done everywhere. Now, I was telling Shanti in this documentary, now for the white people, they do little tiny holes. You can't even see it. Like the people who have trepanation in this documentary, they'll pull their hair back and you'll see a little indentation, but otherwise you wouldn't have noticed. The Africans, because the witch doctors still do, and they do it for total spiritual purposes. They'll be like, that girl over there is crazy, so we're gonna she's got the demons, we're gonna do trepanation on her. They take huge chunks of the skull off within the tribes of Africa. And they actually show in this documentary, just to give you a warning, they show a full procedure with a witch doctor in Africa doing it on a woman. They film the whole thing. Now, with trepanation, Shanti brought up a good point. In most cases, they don't put you to sleep. Now, maybe if you were going through a hospital, a medical procedure, you maybe can ask to be knocked out. That's the only way you're going to get me to do it, is if you knock me out. But most people have trepanation done on nothing. And why is this? Now, we can pull the pictures up if you want, Shanti. I don't know if you want to. Let me actually just put up trepanation here. So your brain, your skull, basically, your skull, apparently, it's very, very bloody when you do this. That's what gets me, is the amount of blood that comes out. Now, there's not a lot of fatty tissue between your skull and your skin. So from what I understand, because there's not a lot of fatty tissue, it's not that painful. It's probably not comfortable. I think if I had to guess, it probably would feel like getting a tattoo or getting a piercing. However, because there's not a lot of fatty tissue, there are a lot of capillaries. So the amount of blood that protrudes from your skull when this is done is unbelievable. And a lot of people are actually doing this to themselves, you guys. There are people out there who are trepanning themselves, like this guy here, the black and white photo down there. He has trepanned himself. This guy. Now, what's interesting, as I said, so you can see like more of the Europeans, they have the smaller holes, right? When we get to Africa, we're looking at bigger holes. Here's a picture right here of an African being trepanned. Here's a European being trepanned. There's actual tools they have to do this for people. There's also something interesting. Here's an old painting. So if you go and look through old art, you're going to see trepanation in old art. This was so common. This was such a common practice for our ancestors and something we absolutely have no idea about today. Here's one. Look at all that blood. But she's awake. Right? So, one thing that's interesting too, and I actually almost pointed this out on Monday when we were talking about Pope Innocent the 8th, and I'm kind of glad I didn't because now we can talk about it now. Back in the olden days, the days of yore, when the monks, you know how monks, it was like they would have like their head would be bald, but they would have a strip of hair around the edge of their, you know what I'm talking about with the monks? Do you guys know why they did that? They did that because they were showing they had been trepanned. They had trepanation. So the monks in the Christian church would get trepanation done to them for spiritual purposes. This was how common this was. So not only was this, now I also, again, I think that our ancestors understood that there was a connection between biological health and spiritual health. I think they were more attuned to that than we are. So, you know, if you could say that getting rid of your migraines or rid of your epilepsy could also be a spiritual experience too. You're releasing whatever tension is in the brain, right? So the fact that nobody ever told us that, I mean, at least for me, when we're studying history and how the monks had their head shaved, but this one little strip of hair around the bottom of their head, no one in my school ever told us it was because that was the mark. That was to show that they had had trepanation. Did you guys know that? Like that was to show the world that they had been trepanned. No one ever told us that. Seems like that's important information to know about our history. So my question and my speculation is, why did they hide this from us? Why have they hidden this surgical procedure from us? Why did the big business of medicine rule this out as a possibility? And I was telling Shanti off air, how much do you want to bet they're still trepanning people in the club, in the controller club, for spiritual purposes? What do you think, Shanti? You think they're doing it in the controllers group?
Wow.
The dark.
Oh, hell yeah. I mean, you know, anything that worked and anything like that, you know, that they can feel also that they can get a quick access to, or a speedier, a sped up, enlightened journey to grab more riches from somewhere, they're gonna go for it.
And then
So
take it away
yeah,
from us. And they're taking it away
yeah,
from us. So we
no
have
doubt.
no idea that this was even done or even a possibility. And that kind of
Right.
it kind of reminds me of like the Hess Act. I talked about that with World War II. I mean, Hitler and the Pope at the time decided to create the Hess Act, which was a propaganda act to get people to stop using divination, to make it of the devil, to dumb us down, stop using astrology, to have this propaganda that it was all evil, so that we would be dumbed down even more with our, you
Yeah.
know, and they would have the upper hand. Now, it is interesting too, you know, in this documentary, they talk about, you know, all of us are born with a soft spot, which is our, you know, our skull hasn't totally, every baby has a soft spot, which is what trepanation is. You're creating a soft spot. Now, rarely, this is very rare, but it does happen, someone's soft spot will not grow together. Now, someone who's always had a soft spot is obviously not going to know the difference between us, whose skulls did grow together, and them. But people who don't, whose skulls never go together, they test higher in schools. They report to have less stress. So all these side effects of people who have trepanation are also shown with people whose soft spot never grows together, which is interesting. So obviously there's something to this. And again, for me, the biological idea of just getting more blood flow into the head is
Do you want me to put up the
I'm gonna look
thing
at
again?
pull up more modern people so you guys can see this. And I highly suggest you guys watching this documentary. Yeah, I got some modern people now that have trepanation done. Now, again, some of these people, like this guy who's got it done on his forehead, I would not suggest doing that. In this documentary, some of the people who have had trepanation, it's in their hairline, so you can't see it. Look, y'all, look at that. Like, people are doing this to themselves. So obviously, it can't hurt that bad if you're able to do this to yourself. Like his is really extreme, and it's in his forehead, so you can see it. But again, some of them are so minor, the holes, that you really, really cannot see it unless they show it to you. Now, this lady, I was saying offline, off air, Shanti, Amanda Fielding, she is in the documentary. And this was the one that really got my stomach queasy because she did it to herself. Here's a shot from the documentary, and the amount of blood was unbelievable. It was crazy, the amount of blood that was coming down her face. But again, the fact that these people are able to do it to themselves and not flinch is probably not that painful, you know? Because you would think if it was super painful, you would mess up, right? Or you would pass out. Yeah,
Right.
May, the head does bleed heavily because of the capillaries. And I think Charmaine asked, where was this started? We don't know. It's all over the world. We see it all over in every culture. There's not one culture that can claim it because all the artifacts that archaeologists are finding, they all date back to the same time period. So there's no idea. We have no idea like what culture actually started it. It seems like they all kind of had it at the same time. So, and I tell you, I mean, I don't know now. But the interesting thing with the African tribes who do this, because they cut such a huge chunk of the skull off, some of the brain you can see some of the brain matter. And so they have to cover their head after they get trepanned. They can't walk around with their head exposed because so much of the brain is exposed. So I don't know if there's a difference between taking a huge chunk off or just a small chunk, which is what they do in the Western world, is a small chunk. And so in the Western world, with just a small chunk of the skull missing, I mean, it literally looks like, when the people who did it, it's like my pen, like the end of my pen. It's so freaking small. The hole is so small. And the skin grows over it for most of the Westerners that they don't have to worry about covering any brain matter. So they don't, again, like if I had it done, I'd probably get it done like right in here. So my hair would cover it. So you would never see that it was even there. And you guys, my boyfriend like wants to go to Mexico and get this done. I'm like, huh? Like, I just don't. I was telling Shanti, like, I'm just good doing psychedelics and yoga. Like if this is about spiritual enlightenment, I might have to wait for the next life to do this. What do you think, Shanti?
I'm not doing it in any life.
It's great. I mean, but I don't. It's like one of those things that you can't look away. Like now that I know about it, and it's so infuriating because obviously, I mean, look at this painting right here again. This old painting from like medieval times. This is a medieval painting. And and this chick right here with the book on her head, she's just watching like this is entertainment. And there's a monk here. Why this dude, who's obviously not a monk, is getting it done. So the fact that this is in our art, this is what makes me so mad. And this is why this is so frustrating to me. This was obviously very well known about. If it's in all of our art.
That picture, by the way, I think because it was in one of the articles I was reading, that was a monk, yes, and the guy there had the mad spirit or something in him. So they were extracting the madness out of him, which is why it would have been a monk there doing that. And as you say, he's got that like a potty around his head, so he would have had it done himself as well, that monk.
Well, the fact that this chick right here is just watching. Like this,
Yeah,
it's in so much artwork and it's so frequently found amongst our artifacts. Like that's what makes me upset is like obviously like I feel like an idiot. I know they didn't tell us this, but obviously this was a huge part of our collective history. Here's somebody who's got a tiny one right here. But obviously
right.
this was a huge part of our collective history and was created to solve a whole bunch of problems from spiritual to physical, and we were not taught about this.
Yeah.
The fact that John Hopkins Hospital came in and said, yeah, we're not going to tell them about this. We're just going to make medicine.
What's interesting to me as well is if you're looking at that bottom skull there now as well, and I've noticed it with a few of them, there's more than one hole in a lot of them.
Yep.
So I'm wondering why they had to go back for so many.
I guess those demons just didn't want to get out.
Trepanings, if that's the word. What would they have done so often? I'd be interested or needed. What was their condition? Did it work for a short while and then you'd have to have another one done because of whatever reason?
I don't know. That's a really good question. And I don't know. Maybe a doctor who was open-minded might be able to tell us. They even had instruments. We have instruments. They have instruments. So you're not going to just take a regular old drill and drill it in your head. They're actual instruments, trepanning instruments that you can buy to put that hole in your head.
Yeah.
So it's to me, this is, again, I can't look away from this. I've been thinking about it ever since we watched the documentary. And it's disgusting. I got very queasy watching it, especially the woman with the blood in her face. I could not watch. Like when it showed the witch doctor doing the full on procedure, like I buried my face into my boyfriend's chest. And even he was going, ooh, like he was making like sound effects, like, ooh, like watching it happen. And when we see it, one thing I thought was interesting. So the scars from the animals, from the livestock, show too that at this time, this is around the time that people started to have compassion for their animals and wanted to relieve their animals of sickness. And so if you had an animal a cow that was showing signs of like a migraine, or I can tell when my dog has a migraine or a headache, you can tell by looking at his eyes, they would trepan the animal to give them relief too. So obviously, in a lot of ways, trepanning someone or an animal was done for compassionate reasons.
Right.
And I feel like, and I know we talked about this was going to be a little bit of a shorter show today. I want you guys, I want to revisit this. I want you guys to watch that documentary, and I want to revisit this, and I want even more people, because there is something bigger going on with this that we're not privy to. I feel like this is kind of like the whole Tartaria stuff. This is such a huge part of our history, obviously. Looking at all the artifacts, looking at the fact that this is an art from all over the world, and the fact that indigenous tribes are still like, how would Shanti in Africa, in the deep in the bush, how would a witch doctor know to do this if he has no real communication with the modern world? It's been passed down. It's been passed down through the ages.
Yes, and through traditions. Yes.
And the fact that this is not unique to just one culture, that's what gets me too. If we can say, okay, this was obviously just something done in France or Europe, or just something done in Africa, we can look back at the cultural significance of that within their own cultural beliefs. But the fact, y'all, it's like these damn pyramids that are all over the freaking world. Trepanation was done all over the world. Why? For thousands of years. Why? Why are we seeing what? Why is it that the monks were having it done in the churches and had markings of their hair to show you that they have been trepanned? But yet they don't teach us about that. That's the only reason why the monks shaved their head like that, was the mark of trepanation. No one thought to tell us that in school.
Right.
What are they hiding? What are they hiding about this?
Yeah.
And I told Shanti I would love to hear from some of our whistleblower friends if this is something that is still done in the dark, in the secret club. If you guys know what we mean by that. Secret group. Do they still do this to each other for spiritual enlightenment? Because demons
Wouldn't
are
surprise
spiritual
me if
too.
they did. It really would not surprise me if they did, you know. Never heard of it, never seen it. I can't say I've ever seen any of the celebs who are the puppets or anything like that walking around with indentations in their head. But there again, they probably wouldn't do it.
And if they did it, they would probably do it like again up in their hair
Yeah, that's what I
where
say.
you
It
wouldn't see it.
wouldn't be
You know,
done
you wouldn't
in
know.
the visible area, you know,
Yeah.
of their faces. So, but it would certainly not surprise me because, you know, as long as something works for them, and especially if there's evidence of this having been done um, by ancestors worldwide, basically, you know, obviously there was a time where these things were common. And, you know, maybe it was a certain uh, level that was allowed that or could attain that or something, you know. But yeah, it's very interesting.
And to be that
Super
trusting,
interesting.
I mean, no offense to the witch doctors out there, I would not let a witch doctor drill a hole in my head. Like but to be that trusting of your elders in all these cultures, whether you're in Africa or Europe or America or China, wherever, to be trusting of the elders to do this to you, to sit there and know the amount of blood that's going to come out. And and I know people who struggle. I mean, my boyfriend struggles sometimes with migraines. I know people who struggle with migraines or struggle with like seizures or epilepsy. This might not be a bad option if it's going to relieve you of that, if it's going to let the blood
Right.
flow get into the brain. Maybe this is the answer. They say that we only use 10% of our brain. Could that be because the brain is constricted to the blood flow?
It's
I
very
don't know.
possible.
I don't know. It's just, to me, it's again, I'll reiterate, it's gross to watch this, but I also can't take my eyes off of it again, because this is not just and you're right, Shanti, like I never heard of this. When my boyfriend brought this documentary to our attention, neither one of us had ever heard of this, but it's everywhere in our history. So that pisses me off. Like, how are we not, we obviously, this is not some like obscure practice that this tiny little tribe in the Philippines did. This was done by
Yeah.
all our ancestors did this. And the fact that it's in all this artwork, and the fact that it was the monks did it, the fact that they just neglected to tell us this in school, like obviously this has been kept away from us for a reason. It's not something that
Yeah.
you just forget about because it was one obscure culture who did it. No. And
Yeah.
how did all of our ancestors all over the world know to do this? Who taught them to do this?
Yeah.
With no
Exactly.
science, how did they know that that opening up the blood flow in the skull to the brain, to the organ of the brain, would relieve certain issues? Who taught them that? I don't know. This is what's
Exactly.
fascinating.
Well, this is, of course, you know, I mean, all the ancient cultures and traditions really, this is all information that's handed down from one generation to the other, you know. It's like that's the way it is. So, but it's
And
interesting. I'd be interested to know if they use it on everyone or if only certain people. I mean, but I guess used for different things. If it was for health purposes, yes, they would obviously use it when they needed to. Spiritual possession, yes, I'm sure they used that for when they needed it too, you know, and just
I
spiritual
it's mostly
enlightenment
males.
generally.
I have that written down. It's mostly males historically that had this done to them. Of course, women can't be spiritual, y'all. Silly gooses. It's always the man, right? So it's the men that mostly had it done with their skulls. So you said, could this be evolution?
Makes sense to me, you know, a lot. I mean, you know, there's no need for me to crack my skull to get spiritual enlightenment. That's for
Right?
sure.
Women don't have to. We don't have to crack our skulls open to find
Yeah,
enlightenment.
I don't like guys. Hello, you're giving yourselves away. Yeah.
I will say for Ursa, you said, could this be evolution to skull shaping due to likeness being overthrown, but still wanting the benefits. I'm not quite sure what you're asking, but as far as like, no, this was actually, if you're asking if it was just something the skull did, no, this was they're very precise holes. Like the holes were created by a tool, by something outside of the body. So it wasn't, if that's what you're asking, it wasn't just the bone shifting and shaping over time. It was literally, it is obvious this has been done by something exterior of the body. And just the artwork
Right.
too that we see with it is, of them showing, obviously celebrating. I mean, listen, if the Van Gogh of the past was going to sit and do a painting of some dude getting a hole drilled in his head while some girl's just sitting there watching, romantically watching, like, wouldn't that be a crazy first date? You go with someone to get them trepanned.
Yeah, exactly. Let's go and declare our love for each other. Let's get trepanned on Valentine's Day.
I could not, y'all. I mean, my boyfriend said he wants to do it. He said he would go to Mexico to get it done, so it's not hassle with the United States. I don't think I could go with him. I think I would throw up. Like, I think I would literally like I would start at the amount of blood that just, and the fact that they're just like chit chatting and talking while it's happening. You'll see it when you watch documentary. They're just like having a conversation. Like, somebody's literally drilling a hole in your head. There is literally blood coming down your face, and you're just shooting the shit.
Yeah, and you're probably not allowed to yell or something. You go, ow, ow, ow,
I
stop.
don't know if people do yell because it just seems like they don't even feel anything. I mean, I listen. I don't want to say never, but at this point, like I said, I'll just do the psychedelic drugs. I'll
Yeah,
find
no,
enlightenment that way. I don't
I
know if this is
don't.
something I
Yeah,
want
I
to.
don't. This does not sound like fun to me. But when I look from the outside, I can understand why people would go to those extremes.
I just want to know
Um,
why they hid it from us. That's my thing. Is like, why did you guys hide this from us? I feel like an idiot because obviously the signs of this are everywhere in art. Like, how come we didn't see this in the art before? Like, how come none of us looked at our old histories art and be like, why are there so many paintings of people getting holes drilled into their head? None of us ever clued into that before. So why? Why did they hide them? What is the secret? Because I guarantee you there's a deeper secret to what even is examined in this documentary. And it's interesting, you guys, because you see some of the medical doctors in this documentary who are against it. And the way that they're against it, it seems very contrived. It seems like they're reading from a script.
yeah,
It doesn't seem like
absolutely.
their honest opinion.
And one of the key things they'll probably say it's archaic or it's barbaric and one of the
Superstition.
ancient.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's interesting because I think, and if anyone knows, please, no, lobotomies are not the same thing.
No.
It's not a lobotomy, right, Bryce?
No, they talk a little bit about lobotomies in this, if I remember correctly, if it was this documentary, but they're not the same thing as a lobotomy. A lobotomy, I think, was done by the bad guys to excuse my language, but fuck us up in the head. I think lobotomies were, I think the
Yeah,
lobotomies came about from a very nefarious place, where trepanation was started from a good place. That's what I
yeah,
get anyway from it, that it was started out of love and concern. Especially, I actually got kind of emotional when I saw that our ancestors, who I think we think of our ancestors as being kind of brutish when it comes to animals like livestock, but the fact that there are signs that people were doing this to their livestock shows that they actually had emotions towards their animals like we do. And they were trying
right.
to relieve the suffering of even their animals, which made me give a little bit more hope to humanity if our ancestors that were supposed to be barbaric were actually showing sympathy and empathy towards their cows and their dogs and their horses, and wanted to help them feel better. Like we want our animals to feel better and have healthy, happy lives. So yeah, that is,
Exactly.
again, I just think that the lobotomies, no, were not good. But trepanation, I think, was absolutely done for good reasons, as
Yeah,
disgusting as it is.
yeah. Who knows what the reverse of that could be? As you say, the lobotomies, well, I don't even want to think about
Yeah.
those sorts of things, and a lot of stuff that probably led off from that as well. But yes, as we know, everything has an upside and a downside, right?
Yeah.
And expose, cover,
Well, they can. That's
overt
something
and
I
covert.
forgot to mention is they can actually. So today, if you get trepanation and you decide you don't like it, they can reverse it today. They can
Right,
put a piece back in to close your skull. So it is
right.
reversible. There was somebody who had it done and then got it reversed, and then she said she wished she never got it reversed. So they can reverse it today. They can close the skull back up if you decide. If for some reason, if you're in a country or in a state where a doctor will do this for you, and again, I think if you go to a medical doctor, it's going to have to obviously be for a continual medical reason. You're probably going to have to deal with insurance, and so it's going to have to be for like migraines or epilepsy or something like that. But they can reverse it today if you don't want it after you. They can reverse it. That probably requires more of a surgery though than just drilling a hole in your head. I would imagine you'd probably have to go fully under surgery to have it prepared.
Well, that's super interesting. So we'd love to hear from you guys in our next show then, if anyone knows anything about this stuff.
Should we put the YouTube and the hold on one second, the link to the documentary? I'm gonna put it in our private chat, Shanti.
Okay.
For our
I'll just
friends.
copy.
For our weird, now we really are weirdos, you guys. This is what other people talk about the stocks and the economy. We're talking about drilling holes in heads. We're the weirdos. We're the weirdos.
Let me just copy link address. And then I'm just going to pop it.
Weirdos unite, Charmaine. Yep. Paris is calling, said, no, you're not weird. You're weirdos. You can't make this stuff up. You know, you can't make it. Truth is always way more interesting than fiction, isn't it? Truth is always, isn't it? Wasn't it Mark Twain that said truth is stranger than fiction? Truth is always stranger than fiction, you guys.
Truth is most definitely stranger than fiction, that's for sure.
So I think we should give everybody homework. Everybody's homework this week is to watch that documentary. I cannot wait to hear everybody's thoughts on this. Like, what do you guys think what is the secret behind this? Obviously, I think there's a secret here that we haven't even discovered yet. What do you think it is?
Yeah.
That's what I want for next week for you guys.
Be interested to hear some feedback on that. Okie doke, all you beautiful people. We need to do a little bit of a shorter show tonight. So we shall see you back with Bryce on Monday and shows for the rest of the week. And yeah, take care. God bless you all. And we'll see you soon. Thanks,
bye, guys.
Bryce.